Good afternoon and welcome everybody online. Welcome to our second Teaching Code Social. I'm Sam. I co-lead the ARC Education activity with David, who you may have seen playing with a balloon. He may currently be out of shot. And Louise is online and she will kind of help with any sort of questions and alert us to questions. Okay. Right, really basic agenda. Hello, welcome to the second one. If you are physically in the building, we're not expecting a fire alarm. If it goes off, we congregate outside the pub. There is coffee and biscuits. Please help yourself throughout. In the kitchen, there is hot and cold water. Please help yourself throughout. And the toilets are just around the corner from the kitchen. You don't have to leave. They're literally just around the corner. There are additional toilets in the lobby if for some reason these are all in use. So we have Rich and Anna are going to talk about the review they're undertaking. And then Matthew's going to talk about Stack. And then we're going to have a bit of social time. So I'm going to hand over to Rich and Anna. They can both have a microphone. I will stop sharing and then Rich can share what he needs to share.
Okay, thanks guys. And thanks Sam for giving us the slot and a chance to talk about what we're doing. Anna and I should put Anna's name on there as well, but I haven't. Some of you I know me, others don't. So I'm Rich Osborne, the faculty learning technology lead for MAPS. You know, the FLTL role was invented in the COVID to help with supporting faculties with technology in the disciplines, and then since made permanent. So there's 10 of us across UCL, if you don't know FLTLs. And I can talk about this coding platforms review. So first off, just want to give you a little bit of background on where this has come from, really. Because, I mean, some of you were probably involved in this first remote labs and practical project back in 2020 in August. So I joined UCL in August 2020, so I have no idea about this, but it happened really. I know some of you were involved though. But obviously when the pandemic hit, there was a need to do all sorts of things, and one of which was to try and teach coding at a distance and support students in coding. As it says, to quickly provide software tools to deliver practical teaching remotely. So I don't know much about how the project ran, who was involved in it, but it came down to, from what I read in the notes from the history, Codio versus CoCal. But I know a lot of other names were thrown into the mix and were considered as potential coding tools. You know, MBGrade, Jupyter, whatever, Submit, and there are other ones since that. Now, which notable that is, I'm not sure about, but I'll talk about notable again later. And obviously, CoCal was selected. So CoCal was the platform chosen at the time. We had bought a license for it, and we talked with that ever since. I did run a student staff review in May 2021. So because I've been quite new to this myself, I wanted to see, you know, what do people think of it? Now we had it in place. What do we like it? Is it working for us? And a lot of the feedback was that the performance wasn't great, and it wasn't, you know, some of the issues that weren't there with assessment and things. But overall, it seemed people were generally the best option we had at the time. So we paid a bit more money. We rejigged all the licensing models, and we've had it ever since. So it seems to be one of the key tools for teaching coding at the moment. But and then it came to the idea, well, hang on, we did do this in a bit of a hurry. So it was, you know, brought in a hurry. So what has happened since? Now we're several years down the line. And I kept humming and ahhing and talking to people about, shall we do a bit of a review of coding platforms, see what else is out there in the market, see what else we can use. And very much focused on teaching and learning. So I put a proposal again with Anna, because we know we had quite a lot of crossover in our faculties. We've got School of Management as well, and we've got, there's a bit of Arts and Humanities, Information Sciences. Mostly it's me and Anna and our faculties who are doing coding. And so the Kenja Makers guys agreed, yeah, we'll give you the money. So we went for, you know, the biggest pot. And we just want a bit more time to to review what's out there, but particularly we wanted to focus on learning and teaching as well. So I want to get the student voice about what they felt was important with coding platforms and how they would look at them and review them. And also, when there's new tools, other stuff seems to appear on the market, particularly, or become stronger, more mature. So that was worth looking at. I also want to get more pedagogic about this. My background is education rather than technology, so I'm an ex-teacher and things as well. So I very much come from a pedagogic background. And try some different ideas. We wanted to try this thing called realistic evaluation, which I can talk about if you were interested, but it's an idea of evaluating which is these key trio, what works for whom in which context. What we're talking about there is, okay, this might work brilliantly for postgrads in astrophysics, and this other tool might work brilliantly for mathematics in year one. You know, and that's different. And if that's important, we need to know that. We want to look at this from that perspective as well. So this idea of realistic evaluation gives us another way of thinking about it. And also the AI thing. Obviously, AI is thrown in the mix. I mean, I remember when ChatGPT appeared on the front of Cocout, within about a week of it being live, it was like, okay, this is going to be interesting. As we'll see how well it can code. I'm sure how well it can't code, depending on what you've been looking at. But we were looking at, we want to see what AI can do to help us in the review, not necessarily how AI might be built into the tools. But can we use AI itself to review the tools that are out there? And if so, how well would it do this job for us? To review tools. So that's what we proposed. And we say we've got the money. It's just started, so we haven't done a lot of work as yet, but this is what we're hoping to achieve. As I say, we're looking to get a better pedagogical picture of coding tools. We want to do this, if we come to this way of talking about it as a multi-dimensional landscape report. So looking at what's out there and the different dimensions in terms of the pedagogy and this idea of realistic evaluation and this idea of AI. So we've got several dimensions we're looking at. And then eventually, and see again how the AI can work alongside us to review and see how well that can do it. And, you know, who knows, we may be able to recommend something new for 2024, 25, because we've got the budget for it. If we decide Codio, Cocout, or Notable or another app is maybe more suited than what we use at the moment, then we can think about, you know, putting a proposed interchange. So that's where we are. Now, on the pedagogic side of things, what I wanted to get away from, and this is a bit novel, so, but I'm partly here, Anna and I, to listen to your feedback and get your thoughts on this. These are the kind of questions you might do in a normal evaluation. I actually nicked this from the Association for Learning Technology document on how to evaluate learning technologies. And they're all kind of nice questions we all need, how easy to use, but it's very much the basic stuff that I want to get away from, really, and not really interested in do the intended user have the necessary? It's very nitty gritty. Is the content of high quality? How are you even going to measure this? Was it high quality or not? You know, what hardware is required? Yes, there's some baseline stuff in there we need to pay attention to, which I'll come back to. But on the whole, this is exactly the kind of questions we kind of don't really want to ask. What we're doing is we're trying to use this thing as the basis for evaluation. Now, I know this is a bit complicated. If you don't know what this is, if you don't know what this is called the conversational framework. So this comes out of Professor Diana Laura's work in history of education. It's been a long-standing kind of tool. What she did in the book she wrote about this, she took all the basic learning theories that we know and love, and basic stuff about behaviorism and stuff, and Skinner's box and stuff, to cognitive science and some of the more modern and best ideas like connectivism. And she tried to create what she called the simplest model, and this is allegedly the simplest model of learning. Yeah. And how we learn. It gets simpler, believe me. And yeah, ABC is all based on it. You actually, I know it looks complicated, but what actually looking at here, you're looking at teacher, student, and peer, and you're looking at in place or in place. This is environment, and this is the people. So what it's all about is cycles. It's about teachers exchanging ideas with learners, about learners producing things for teachers, about learners talking to other learners, about the things they're doing, about learners doing practice, with resources, engaging with the materials, and then thinking about stuff and engaging again. It's back and forth. It cycles up and down, left to right, which is the learning process you go through. Now, luckily, Diana reduced it to 6 learning types, which makes it a lot easier to understand. So then she says, actually, almost all the learning we know of, we can kind of break down into these 6 learning types. Acquiring is like lectures, inquiring is going off by yourself and discovering things for yourself. Producing is basically assessment, producing something that could be then measured and judged. Discussing, obviously, pretty self-explanatory. Collaborating with others, producing a product, working with others as a team. And practicing is like quizzes and stuff, testing on knowledge and getting feedback on how well you do or do not understand a topic. So, those 6, I think we can get, and those 6 is how we intend to try and look at coding platforms. So with the students, we want to look and say, well, how good is it at acquiring knowledge? How good is it at, supporting discussion between students? How good is it collaborating? And so on and so forth. So we want to look through the lens of this conversational framework to see how well a coding platform may or may not meet their needs. because this is a really well-established model. And it's well, it's been well researched and stuff. Now, there is a caveat, of course, but only that in as much as, we're not expecting every platform with everything here. So, obviously a lot of teaching comes in seminars, in lectures, and in other groups, and informal circumstances, which may cover some of these chunks. But at least if we evaluate platforms we know and love against these kind of learning types, we'll have a baseline which we can evaluate and do a comparative analysis. So that's the plan. So where are we now? So we've only just started, got the students recruited. So we had one dropout, but we've got 6 students. So not as huge as me and Alice, so small team really. We're working in pairs. We're trying to encourage them to have a dialogue between themselves, to look at technologies and have that exchange. We've matched them specifically based on sometimes on level, sometimes on discipline. So we've got astrophysicists work together, fourthies working together, and so on. We've got project plans, we've agreed all that, and we first off said, well, we do need to do some baseline stuff. First off, we need to know, is it accessible? Is it beat legislation? Does it, is it scalable? Does it meet some of the more boring stuff that we need to be sure it's actually there? But Anna's going to talk about this because I missed the last session with students, but you ran it, so you know much about how this works.
It works. So I just cover a little bit how we worked with students on evaluating this, and some of them are surprising finding for me. So we paired students in groups, and we've given each of the groups about 3 platforms to review. And students had a mixture of like trying out platforms and just looking through their website, surfing and understanding. And unsurprisingly, the findings are that accessibility comes out as a real sticking point. So only like a few of those platforms we reviewed explicitly state they're compliant to certain accessibility criteria. And I was very much surprised how interested students are in educational use and how well they understand the concept. So this is something which I think is not covered in this type of usual evaluation. Does this product perform this or performs that, or how like cheap or expensive it is? But students certainly made a point whether this can address the tasks they already been given. Has it been like this type of assessments they've seen already? They were really interested in whether it can be like the actually acquiring can be shared through this platform. So where they can have teachers' lectures, where they can have highlighted codes, where they can have anything that they are very used to. And I wanted to mention that we recruited these 6 students from about 32 maybe applications. And loads of students mentioned they already are engaging themselves with different tools, even if they're not like required to by their basically program. They just want to explore things. And I think this is a very good sort of angle of viewing this compared to the traditional procurement process, because ultimately the students will be using this, and this the approach also like trying to break things, trying to understand how they work, logging in immediately, trying to upload their libraries they're using for their code. It's all, and it's proven that they have a much deeper to, again, I was, possibly it's not something interesting, but I was really surprised how determined they were and how interested they were in making it work for them. And also they highlighted things like scalability, performance. Again, legislation is a little bit, again, it's also very interesting how what you can tell by a sort of sales pitch and by the things that you can just access without having a license to those things. And it would be interesting because we will then make a more thorough evaluation throughout the criteria of the Laureate conversational framework. And again, maybe purchasing some trial licenses as well, so students can experience like the sort of pro versions of certain products. And this is also, I think, very interesting with students that they evaluated everything, but also they were evaluating it around the criteria which are not listed there, like how easy was it to use, how familiar was it to them in terms of like, have they encountered something similar before, how useful the languages were for them, because I think we have also a very good mixture of students who are programming focused, like computer science. So they do programming for all their courses, nearly all their courses. And the students like astrophysics who do a little bit of programming, or the students from economics who do a certain type of like data science more than like traditional programming. So getting them in pairs and talking to each other about their types of assessments and their types of engagement with different platforms was really, really interesting. So I'm very much looking forward to, so we already discarded some of the platforms because they're not compliant. Again, as I said, most of it is accessibility, but some of them are not suitable for educational use because they're designed to completely different, like industry standards. And we are now progressing towards a conversational framework. So yeah, that's me.
Cool. Thanks, Anne. Cool. So I'd say that's where we are. So we meet every couple of weeks to push this forward, and we got a few on-campus meetings and workshops as well. So what we plan next to say, we're looking at this multi-dimensional idea of the landscape report. The platforms we're looking at in particular are those 10. Interestingly, as we've gone through, I mean, I don't know if you might recognize them. If there are some missing from there, we definitely want to know about it. JDoodle, well, yeah, there you go. JDoodle was actually one recommended by an AI when I was looking into this, which was I was looking at using Gemini, and Gemini suggested I was doing some of what we talked about, because Anna and I did a Replit together just as a test because we wanted to see if this would work. So we went through it and we evaluated Replit against our criteria, and then we only discovered late. If you know Replit, the platform, but they are dumping all their educational support, and it's not really clear. It's hidden, buried in some of the talk on Reddit and things elsewhere, but they're actually canning it, which is a real shame because it was a candidate. But it's still a danger of getting involved with these things if you're going to just can the educational aspect without warning. Notable, there are two notables in here. You might know the one from Medina up in Edinburgh, which was quite fancy. There was another notable from the States. Very well funded, very posh, great, secure platform, now dead. It just went in a matter of months because they lost, their funding dried up and they're suddenly history. So it's a real danger there that and Henry Flubitz we decided was rubbish as well, and the students saw this there and didn't like that one. So, we're finding out some interesting things already with this kind of lightweight approach and this kind of technique using AIs as well. It's been interesting really to run the AIs through it as well, and then look at the AIs compared to us to see, well, what are they coming up compared to us? And even Gemini versus Copilot. Obviously, we've got Copilot now in a secure way, which is useful to be able to use, which we are doing. But then Gemini and Copilot had different ideas, quite significantly different ideas about Replit. So, it's giving us, so I say, this review of reviews on the end here, the idea is we're looking to review how they review, giving us an insight into that. So I think that's us. One other thing I was going to share, wasn't it? This is the idea of the visualization, actually, about how we think we're hoping to summarize the affordance, if you like, of these tools in context. So I know it's not massively clear probably at a distance, but this is, I've used these charts quite a lot in my work. I quite fancy them. So if you see my work before, you might recognize it. Acquiring, producing, these are the 6 learning types. And basically, we're rating on a scale of 1 to 7 with the students. And we're going to be putting these are made up just for demonstration purposes. But this will give us a comparative picture, a visual description of how well these platforms meet these 6 learning types, which I think will be quite useful. That's the plan anyway. Okay, so we just wanted to hear from you, really. That was it in terms of where we've come from and what we're planning on trying to achieve here. So as I say, what is any thoughts really? Is just sound good, sound bad? Is there things we've been missing? Platforms specifically, if you think there's in there we need to include. I know as academics and teachers, I've worked with a few of you already on what are your priorities, and assessments come up, and some other ways that works or doesn't work online is an issue. So we want to hear your voices, and we're still thinking of how the rest of the project is going to proceed. What conversations might the students have with yourselves? Maybe you could have an interview or a little chat, and they could get your side of the point too.
I thought you had a question. What questions do we have, Anna? Online colleagues, if you could put your hand up, I will unmute and give you your video access, or Blue will. Is there anyone in the room with a question?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's really interesting what you've been looking at there, and I'm kind of curious how. So these kind of tools are increasingly important for teaching and increasingly important for supporting the student experience, but we tend to rely a lot on kind of online third-party tools for this kind of thing. And I think like you mentioned with Replit and some of the other tools there, I think there's an increasing cases of where people start to use these things because they're free, but of course the providers are waiting to see if there's usage of it, and once the usage grows, suddenly they want to generate a revenue stream, which is perfectly reasonable. But I wonder if you think the scope for a community of people in our kind of space to be developing our own tools to support this kind of thing, because you see that in a lot of other areas in research space, but I don't know that I see it in this area. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Thanks. I mean, I think obviously, I'm assuming most of you know about a notable coming out of Edinburgh. It's because of, I mean, that's, I think, been a favorite because of some of that background in terms of, I mean, I work obviously with Slack. I know Matthew's going to think on Slack next, but, it's come out the same kind of halls in a way to dedicated for us working in education. We very much wanted to come at this from a teaching and learning perspective and assessment, but we kind of embed that in that idea too, because that's the big hole, I think, in a lot of these. They bolt on that, the education bit as a third party, rather than take it from the ground up to be, this is for teaching and learning code. But we haven't talked about, I must admit, ever, developing something from the ground up.
If I can answer as well. So I think that's it's a great idea. There are two things, which one of those things are platforms are industry-wide use. For example, for data science, I forgot how it's called, data something. This is a platform which is industry-wide use. So it might be that there is a training at the university for the future employment in a way. And another thing, which is one of the main sort of advantages of using some of those tools, are collaborative coding. So that CoCal came about because the need of collaborative coding. And I don't know how easy or difficult will be this implementing this in-house, I think. Also, I don't know whether we need any scalable, so we do need it to be scalable. And for example, some of the modules have hundreds of students in them. I understand that it's not millions of users like in another platform, but yeah, it's interesting whether we can do something scalable. But for example, one of the things which is really lacking now is even a Moodle plugin to submit code. So people are submitting code in PDF files or in some other very, very odd things which are not very easy to grade afterwards. And you could run automated tests on them. So you need to do things manually, very manually. So this is one of the things which is really lacking, and also it's really needed as well. So I was thinking whether something like this could be implemented in-house, for example, for starters. But I think it's a really, really valid point. So we can use something in-house if it can answer all those questions. Well, I think, yeah. Sorry.
Right, we're going to move to the two online questions. John, you should have should have the ability to speak and put your video on if you'd like to.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, just to say a few things about what we do. So we teach using Quarto and Docker and GitHub. So we've tried to build our instruction around kind of the open source, well, Docker, largely the open source stack that software developers would use in the real world. And then where we've run into a few problems is more on assessment. So I wanted to actually try and test student learning of programming separately from their ability to use ChatGPT. And that proved challenging because most of the assessment platforms don't allow randomization. So it was very hard to try to detect cheating or also work out what sort of questions could just be done copy paste. Was pretty hard. We ended up trying to run it as a quiz in Moodle, which does allow for randomization. But then I discovered that downloading code from Moodle is a nightmare. So I'm definitely in the market for a good assessment platform, but I feel pretty comfortable with what we do in terms of teaching as being modeled on kind of real world practices.
So John, in the summer, I was involved in a workshop in Manchester, and we actually produced a white paper, policy white paper around assessment in competing. So I can quite happily share that with people afterwards.
Yeah, sounds good.
We can't hear you. Did you want to type your question in the chat and then we can answer?
Can I answer the previous one? Not answer actually, for the question, another question. So I've come to talk to certain lecturers in engineering, and they were using the really available platform like GitHub, but as there are certain functionalities which needs to be paid for if you want to use it on students. And I was wondering, what is it? Is it like as an overall approach on this? I know, but um,
education.
yeah. Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And so in UCL, we have so GitHub offers this for free on students. The only functionality that it might be required to get a enterprise GitHub subscription is the Moodle integration.
Yeah.
But it's not good. So I don't recommend that anyway.
Yeah. Pipelines that they need to pipe certain things to the pipelines.
Pipelines. So all right. So there's the GitHub Actions. Maybe that's that it produced some with the educational discount that GitHub offers. Most of the time is enough. You get like a bunch of minutes for free as an organization. The only thing with GitHub is that you need to run the model that they suggest is that you run organization per course. So the number of minutes that you use are not shared across multiple courses. And that makes it easier to link with the GitHub Classroom with the permissions that they need to use. So yeah, but the Moodle integration, yeah, well, it was not good last year. I don't think they have changed anything. You read, Ben?
Okay, so Ben's question comment is similar to points made before, but even if not developing our own tools, can we deploy our own, like the existing Jupyter Hub, reduce lock-in to external service?
Yes. So we have a Jupyter Hub already running on UCL. We call it as the data science, together with an RStudio as well. And the RStudio, the only thing with the RStudio is that it needs a license to be used for teaching. So if anyone wants to use the RStudio instead that we have, we need to require request it as a license. The Jupyter Hub one is for free, but it's run on only like 2 machines, big machines, but 2 machines. So depending on the classroom size, we will and what they are going to run on the classroom side on those classroom, we need to be ready for that. But they are available, and they include also, I don't know whether it's working on anyone when is using it, but includes the NB grader as well on those instances that we have. And that's part of ARC services that we run. Now, can I ask a question?
Huh? Yeah, that's a question.
Okay, we just connected with what Jeremy was saying and what Ben has said now, which is about the lock-in of things. So on the list of all the software that you're trying, I only identified, I don't know about the notable of US, but from that list, only 1.5 are open source. One of them sells it as a service, like Cocalc, but it's still open source. And the other, I suppose, that is the Doodle. Is that open source?
JDoodle, I'm not sure.
JDoodle, no, okay. So yeah, that's my 1.5. So Minty is not there, which is what I've been advocating for years. And it's open source, has been created by the community. It's been supported by a big university in US. And I know other universities, one in Ireland, Learn or Christmas, that they are using it as well. However, when I see at your list of tools that you're comparing, they are completely different things. Like Fluebits is not for teaching. Fluebits is for live, like pair programming. And there are other tools, more open source like than Fluebits, that use the same thing. So VS Code have live share. It comes with VS Code and it works in the same way that Fluebits, even better, I would say. Then you had, for example, comparing with Sumity and well, the way that so some of them like usage, as you were saying, like what people are using in industry, things that people are working with. But then there's the bit of how you use that for, as John was asking, for marking. It's completely different world, and I'm not sure how you're gonna compare then the graphs.
No, absolutely. And I always get the sense that we'll get deeper into this. There's two things happening here. There's the need to teach, very, as Anna sort of suggested, early students, especially students who aren't even coders necessarily, and how to use a coding platform, how to write code, and how to be evaluated when writing code, how to teach and assess with code, as opposed to you're going to be a coder, you need to learn how to do this stuff in the bigger world when you leave and go on. And that's almost like authentic assessment from my mind. To like you're doing that even now from the beginning, because these guys are coming in knowing that's their direct trajectory. So there may not be a place, I think, for some of these tools with those kind of students. We're looking quite broad, I think, and whereas you guys are you're looking quite deeply into a different thing you're trying to achieve with coding. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
We're gonna last
So-
comment because we need to wrap up
Yeah,
this
last
section.
comment that I would really want to raise. So you've mentioned open source, and I was really wondering. So we didn't have the open source and any criterion in our assessment. I am very much pro open source and things like this. I won't go into details for this, but I really know well that universities often like things which come with support service and were packaged with tech support, and it's not very often with open source or community based things, especially. Yeah, I mean open source in the more like not that the things are or just open source, which is, but yeah, I mean in community developed and things like this. So there is a tension between this, and we will probably take this discussion afterwards to the socializing time. But yeah, really interested to know how important open sourceness is for our values and at UCL.
Right, thank you. We're going to. We're going to switch what we are sharing, and we're going to hand over to Matthew to talk about Stack. I'm sorry, this is a little bit clunky. It's like Dan over cable.
Right. Okay, there we go. So yeah, thank you to the organisers for inviting me to talk today. My name's M.Towers. I teach mathematics in the math department here at UCL. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Stack. Let's see if that works. We can't really see the top. How can I make the bar go away so we can see the rest of the slide?
I know it's just to do with me, how I set up my screen. There we go.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, so let me start just by explaining a little bit about what Stack actually is. So in its own words, Stack is the world-leading open source automatic assessment system for mathematics, science, and related disciplines. And what that means in practice is you get a, okay, that didn't work. Sorry.
Just use the down arrow.
All right. I think it should actually be that. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, so what that means in practice is that you get a Moodle plugin, and what the Moodle plugin gives you is a Stack question type. And what is special about the Stack question type is that it allows you the full use of a computer algebra system, so Maxima, to assess the answers that your students to give you to generate feedback. So you have the full facilities of like a quite powerful, quite general computer algebra system to work with in writing Moodle questions. That's really what's special about Stack, beyond what will be available to you with standard Moodle question types. Stack is a pretty old, pretty mature, stable piece of software. It was created by Chris Sanguin, who's a professor of mathematics currently at the University of Edinburgh. Around 2012, that's the first commit in their GitHub repos in 2012. So it's been around a long time now. It's very stable software. We've been using it since the pandemic at UCL. In mathematics, at least, we've been using it since then. I've never reported a Stack bug in that time, and we've never had availability problems. We've never had problems with Stack bugs. It's really a solid piece of software from a user's point of view. At least it's really popular as well. There's a big user community for Stack. It's available in several different languages. It's used around the world. There's an annual Stack conference. There's a Stack Africa conference. It's a very popular thing, very widely used thing, which is obviously very useful because they have a good developer community and user community who you can actually interact with if you need help producing Stack things. And best of all, as I say, it's available to us at UCL. So anybody who uses Moodle at UCL can use the Stack question type. So I imagine that's most people in this room. If you want to have a go at authoring Stack questions, you can do that. And if you want to actually try out ones which already exist, right at the end of the talk, I will link you to Stack's demo server where you can see some of the best things that have been done in Stack. But yeah, this is something that we've been using in mathematics very widely since the start of the pandemic. We use it on all of our core year one courses. We use it on other courses as well. It's used heavily in engineering, in stats, maybe even some other places in UCL. So there is quite a bit of expertise in UCL, which in the use of Stack. We have, even in mathematics, we've got Stack teaching fellows, so people who were brought into UCL with the aim of it being their job to look after Stack issues, for us at least. So yeah, it's something that's actually really heavily used in mathematics at least, and in other UCL departments and faculties. Okay, so let me show you a little bit about what we can do with Stack and what is useful about it, like what special things that it can give us. So, I mean, to begin with, like, I want to talk about some things which are not necessarily Stack specific, but which are specific to the kind of online assessment that you can do with Stack, which make it so useful to us. You know, one of the key things which made it useful to us initially when we started teaching fully remotely during the pandemic was that it enabled us to have our new first years doing online quizzes and getting some instant feedback on what they were doing. So being given straight away an answer to what they, to the work they've been doing, and to have their work graded straight away, to be given actual helpful feedback on the work that they've done straight away. And that kind of stuff is really valuable to you as, somebody who's a beginner in a technical discipline who needs to build their confidence, or who needs to be told when they've got something not quite right. The fact that you can actually have this happening immediately, straight away, is a big, it's a real advantage to people in that situation. So I was able, for example, to structure my courses that I was teaching at the time, so that our students would come in, to the Moodle page for that module, watch a short video, and then immediately be able to do a short quiz question, checking that they understand correctly what they've been taught in that video. And if necessary to review things, if not, they would know that they were ready to move on. Like, it was a really helpful way for us to be able to structure things. Now, of course, you can do that. There's nothing specific to Stack about that. Anything with any kind of online assessment system can allow you to do that. But I mean, what Stack does let us do is to make mathematical calculations. So to deal with things like ambiguity, questions with lots of possible correct answers. So this is a really basic example, but there is some calculation going on behind the scenes there. They're asked to do, to give a certain example, a logical example, for which there are lots of possible different answers. And I can ask Stack not only to check whether the answer that they've given is actually one of the possible correct answers, but to tell them, if they have it wrong, precisely what they have wrong about this. And yeah, it becomes a really useful for them to be able to do that. It also, where Stack really does give us something beyond standard Moodle quizzes, is that it lets us work with mathematical data, like complex mathematical objects, which would be very difficult to work with or impossible, difficult with a general purpose programming language and impossible with just standard Moodle quizzes. For example, we might want to ask questions to our students where they would have to work with vectors, matrices, permutations, functions, logical constructs, sets, lists, all these kinds of things. Stack will let you work with these, and we'll have tools built in to allow you to work with them reasonably efficiently and easily, which is a huge advantage, because it lets people who are solving these questions actually express themselves naturally using the kind of notation that they would use in a standard math course, rather than have to enter their answers in some kind of obscure way. Like in the second example here at the bottom, there's a question about set theory, where they have to enter some example sets to give an example, to give a counterexample to a certain statement. This is really easy for them to do. So one of the things that I think often concerns people with this kind of assessment is, how am I going to teach my students the syntax that they need to use? You know, am I going to have to give them a short course in how to write Maxima code in order to use this stuff? You really don't need to do that. You know, again, over several years of using this stuff, I've virtually never had problems with students being unable to enter the answers they want to answer, because there is a lot of features which you can use to get around that. Actually, you can see at least 3 different ways of communicating to students exactly how they have to enter their answers in that second example at the bottom of the screen. That we can use syntax hinting, like in the very bottom box there. You can give a grayed out example of the kind of thing which people ought to be typing for them to model their answers off. We can use just text in the question text, explaining the kind of thing that they're going to need to type. And we could also have online monitoring of the syntax that they're actually trying to enter. So if you look at the red box in the middle of there, the thing that somebody's tried to type in there is missing a bracket, unbalanced brackets. Stat won't let them submit that. And in fact, it will tell them what's wrong with the thing they tried to type, and it won't let them submit that until they correct it. So those kind of those features really allow us to just completely avoid any problems, any obstacles with people not being able to enter the things, to enter the answers that they want to enter. Like in practice, it's really no problem with students getting on with the syntax that's required. The barrier is really very, very low for using this stuff. We also have a lot of not just randomization facilities. I mean, obviously, it's really important to have randomization in this kind of problem, because we'd like to be able students to be able to use this stuff to practice. Like they would like, if there are some really basic fundamental skills, they're going to want to practice them over and over again. So if we can have randomization, then that means one question can be used a lot of times to practice the kind of skills that we want beginners in algebra, in this case, to have. A lot of the times, for the kind of questions, mildly sophisticated questions we want to ask, that means randomization beyond just generating random numbers. So for example, in the matrix that appears in this question here, that's not just a matrix where I've generated each of the numbers in that matrix independently at random. That's a random matrix with certain special properties. If you want to generate random sequence of linearly independent vectors, or a random invertible matrix, or a random matrix that doesn't have full column rank, you've got the whole power of a computer algebra system letting you do quite complicated random generations for all kinds of objects. So that ability to have all of the functions of a computer algebra system really pays off like this. And it also, perhaps most importantly, actually, it really lets us give really helpful feedback when people have got stuff wrong. So there's an example here where the question asks our first-year algebraists to take a matrix and put it into a special form. And the special form they're asked to put it in is quite complicated. So often people get this stuff wrong. They can't remember the definition. They make an arithmetic error. They don't quite understand the definition. What we're able to do is to look at the answer and not just say, this is wrong, here's the correct answer, but actually to understand why the answer is wrong and to give feedback tailored to it. So what happens here in this yellow box at the bottom, somebody's got this question at the top wrong. What I'm able to do in the feedback is I have some static text that I've entered when I was creating this question, just explaining what the definition they were supposed to apply was. What I can also do is tell them exactly why their answer was wrong, like which part of their matrix was wrong, which part of the rules did they not follow, or even just to say that your answer looks right, except you must have made an arithmetic error somewhere in your calculation. So this kind of feedback is, it's really invaluable. It's something that'd be very difficult to do, even with a human marker. You've got when I first did this, I think there were 450 students on this module. Nobody is marking 450 scripts extremely carefully and looking for where the arithmetic error was in somebody's solution and telling them where it was. Whereas with a little bit of programming, I can do that in a stack question. So that kind of stuff, you know, I mean, even for us at UCL, it's hard. So if you imagine it being at a university which doesn't have the resources UCL does, it really adds a lot of value to be able to write this kind of very detailed personal feedback that's actually based on precisely what you got wrong in your answer. Yeah, so this is actually a question that wasn't written by me. One of my former colleagues, Ganica Manhart, teaches applied math to our first years. And another thing you can do with Stack is to use some JavaScript graphing libraries. So what you've got there is it's not just an image, it's an interactive graph. You can move the sliders at the top. Your Stack question can take the information from those sliders and use it in computation. So there, what's happening is you're trying to solve a question about fish populations governed by some kind of differential equation. You can use the modeling tool in that graph to actually verify the answer that you've got. And what you can also do, like another Stack data type that I hadn't mentioned, is that you have the opportunity of entering symbolic expressions. Like Stack can understand, because it has a computer algebra system at the back, it can understand symbolic expressions. So there you ask to answer to enter not a numerical answer, but an expression involving the variables expressed in the question. That's useful for questions like this. And it's actually really useful teaching math at a lower level. Like if you want to teach people to multiply out brackets, if you want to do like some quite basic algebraic concepts, then the fact that you can take an expression, understand the structure of this expression, you know, has somebody really multiplied this out? Have they gathered together like terms? You've got the power to do that, because what you can do with Stack is to actually examine the structure of the expression that somebody has entered. So yeah, you can do really a lot of things which would be more or less impossible with other Moodle quizzes and very difficult in a general purpose programming language. Okay, so there are some disadvantages. Like I've given you a really quick tour of Maxima, of Stack. I do have to give, I think, a few like of the maybe non-optimal things, or some of the things which make working with Stack a little bit more difficult, One of which is it's based on this Maxima, which is one of the earliest computer algebra systems. It itself is based on a very early computer algebra system with an earlier with a similar name from the 60s. Maxima itself first came out in 1982, so it's nearly as old as I am. It's also showing its age a little bit. And for example, one of the things that you notice if you're trying to write Maxima code is it's not very easy. Like if you want to write, it's a very dated language. Maxima itself was written in Lisp, but the Maxima language is a imperative language built on top of Lisp, and it doesn't fit especially well. Some of the programming is quite annoying to work. If you want to calculate the first eigenvector of a matrix M with the 0th eigenvalue out of the list of eigenvalues, then your syntax is something like the first element of the 0th element of the 0th element of eigenvectors M. Actually, the other way around, but anyway. It can be awkward to write. The point I'm getting across is not a modern programming language. Writing Maxima code is not a great deal of fun. Worse than that is the fact that the way you author Stack questions is purely in Moodle. So you have a Moodle page with dozens and dozens of options with various boxes where you can put your Moodle page, writing code in a Moodle page, configuring lots of complex options, debugging things in a Moodle page where you want to save something, you have to refresh it and reload the whole page. It's not a lot of fun. It's quite difficult to do, and it makes creating the kind of complex questions, which really, in my opinion, are Maxima's strength, where you can really use the power of Maxima to actually to really offer really good quality feedback and work with complicated mathematical objects. It's quite a difficult process. So if you can avoid doing that somehow, it's good to do that. You know, things like text editing facilities. You know, you don't have any good text editing facilities in a text box on a Moodle page. Version control, there is now version control in Moodle questions, but it's pretty primitive. Debugging, it's better just not to make any bugs in the first place. Yeah, it's not ideal. I mean, I think this is actually so part of Stack's philosophy, that they would like writing Stack questions to be something that's accessible to not just to people who are into programming, but to any moderately technical educator in a subject that uses mathematics. So they're very keen to have, from the looks of it anyway, that they're keen to have their entire interface to be based on working with a Moodle page. So I don't know of any moves they've made to like letting you author offline, which it is what it is. I think that's what their design philosophy is. And it means that, you know, obviously whatever educational thing you're going to produce, it's going to take a lot of time and effort to do it well. But that's especially true when you have to interact with very large, slightly clunky Moodle pages to produce the content you want to produce. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't want to be too negative about Stack. I really, really like it. It's been very, very useful to us in mathematics. And I think we're very grateful to both Chris and the team who've developed it, and to those at UCL who've helped actually install it into the UCL Moodle ecosystem. It's not just a simple plugin. You don't just have to copy a few files onto a server somewhere. Like we have Maxima running in the background. It's a non-trivial thing to get it working. So, and also to maintain it as well as it's been maintained while we've been at UCL. As I say, we've had virtually no issues around Stack and its installation here throughout the number of years that we've been working, that we've been using it. Yeah, okay, so just to sum up, I mean, what Stack really gives you is the ability to use complicated mathematical objects and to give automatic, adaptive, personalized, detailed feedback to what people have gone wrong. So it's incredibly valuable to beginners, especially when they're in a learning remotely or learning asynchronously, which for UCL, that's not so much the case now, but although it was when we first started using it. One of the most annoying things about Stack is its name. I would urge people who are considering writing any kind of system like this to please choose an easily Googleable name. So if you search for Stack Algebra, you won't get what you want. So I will publish these slides on my website, and there'll be some nice clickable links to the Stack website where you can actually have a go on Stack. You can use their demo server, and you can also see some of the, and reuse if you want, some of the Maxima code that I wrote for working with algebra questions in Maxima. Okay, I think that's all I had to say. Thank you.
I can say I agree. I've done some training on Stack. It's incredibly powerful, but oh my God, it's a bit of a pain to do what you want to do. But when you get over the hump, it's awesome, like most things. Right, Peter.
Thanks very much. Interesting presentation. I want to go back to the previous discussion about open source that we had, because what struck me here was that it was running since 2012. And clearly, universities have to be convinced, or large organizations have to be convinced that having open source isn't a statement about durability or maintainability or the value of it. Clearly, a system like that, and there are other open source projects out there that are far longer running, like Linux, for instance, right? I mean, it's probably one of the, which is running on a number of servers. So I think I appreciate your thought that you mentioned that it's difficult to convince universities, but open source software tools often are at least as durable as commercial systems, which sometimes, as you demonstrated, are actually going under just a few months. So I just wanted to highlight that. Sorry.
Actually laughing because Moodle itself is open source. Right. That was kind of why, because actually we are wholly dependent on Moodle. We have been since 2012, and it is a fully open source platform. And we've had this since at least 2018
Right.
because they played with it pre-COVID. So we've had it quite a while. Anna.
Yeah, sorry. I was one of the people who really pushed for Stack being introduced into live Moodle in 2020. The things which I wanted to mention a few more sides, sorry for this. We did have a little bit of problems because people who install Stack, they're really good in Moodle, but they're less sort of advanced in Stack usage. So usually when we have a Moodle upgrade, someone forgets to hook up the Maxima databases, so it's not working for a couple of hours. But then, yeah, it's very much easily fixed, so it's great. And nothing which I wanted to mention. So I ran a training on Stack for PGTAs, and this Maxima from 1982, which is my age actually, it's really coming through because people who are used to code in Python, they are not really liking it, especially I'm in engineering, and it means that they have very good computer science skills usually, people who are teaching, but like maybe less advanced mathematics. So sometimes Stack has because it has about maybe 10 or 12 types of evaluating an answer, and for engineering PGTA students it might be quite difficult to understand the subtle differences which are mathematically based. And nothing's about Stack. So I was really interested in maybe having, we've talked about it with Reach and with Ruth, I think, so several times already. So we might have a UCL wide Stack support system and Stack training, which I think would really help, because I think you in maths are really are doing really well, but in terms of supporting it and writing tricky questions. But I think other departments might benefit from your expertise. But also, I think you might benefit from, I don't know, other questions as well. So if you have like a shared database of it, it might be really good if a joint effort. Yeah. And final thing I wanted to mention about Stack is that we use it on a very big course for about 1,000 students, and we use it in flipped learning. So they do that, was exactly what you mentioned. They do the beginner things themselves, and then they got into live teaching session with a tutor already doing more advanced problems because they did all the basics themselves with Stack. So I think it's a really great tool for all the beginners courses, which everybody hates writing questions for, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point about flipping, actually, which I probably should have brought up. Like the course which I was teaching fully online during COVID, I now teach in person, but I'm still able to, during those lectures, get my students to do some of their Stack questions. I can generate like a QR code that will take them to a particular Stack question and then say, right, we're going to stop and you're going to spend 5 minutes solving this particular problem about the thing I've just been talking about. And it's a great way to break up those lectures and to get people to actually be working, be doing something other than just listen to me talking. So that's another good thing about, another good thing which I found to do with Stack. As to what like backend they used, whether there was another option for Maxima. I mean, I guess Chris's problem was that he needed something which was, he wants to make Stack open source, and he probably needs to distribute some kind of open source computer algebra system. And I'm not really sure what the options were back in 2012. I mean, if you were doing it today, you might think of using something like Sage, where the coding would be a lot nicer to people who are familiar with. Sage uses Maxima, but you've got a Python interface, so you're writing what's essentially Python. But
I'm assuming we're not talking about the accounting software.
No. So there's a Sage, which is a computer algebra system that kind of glues together quite a large section of other open source mathematical computation tools, but it does that with Python. So you can essentially, I mean, you can more or less write Python, but interact with Maxima as well as a load of other tools. So it's much nicer from a user's point of view, but I mean, there's a lot more overhead. I don't know, I'm no expert in this stuff. I don't know even if it will be suitable now, but it certainly wasn't available when Chris started Stack.
I understood that you need Maxima for creating the questions on Stack, but do the learners also need to use Maxima to answer the questions on Stack? Or they're like, because the one that you show is like kind of a entry points of a number, or like a form essentially.
Yeah, well, you can treat their input as Maxima input. You can evaluate it.
Okay, so one of the questions could be write that in Maxima language. That's will be one of the questions. Or
I'm not sure how much Maxima code they could actually submit. I mean, there's obviously a lot of like sanitization that goes on to make sure they can't do anything really awful. I mean, they can enter maxima expressions, but I don't know to what extent they can enter complex expressions. Like, I mean, the only thing that we've really used it for is just for really simple things like entering things which I will interpret as permutations, functions, sets, that kind of thing, lists. But actual maxima code beyond that, I've never done.
So the main complexity goes to the creator of the questions rather than for the
Yeah. I mean, that's really
okay.
the important. I mean, that's something that was really important to me writing those questions, that I would not have to have some barrier of learning, of students having to learn how to use some obscure syntax in Mathematica. They can just type more or less the same kind of notation that they're used to as mathematicians.
Yes. So again, from engineering perspective, I would like a little bit to disagree that engineering students had a little bit more problems with explicit syntax because you need to do a little bit of syntax learning. For example, you need to have multiplication and asterisk. You couldn't do it like just basically omitting it or something like this. So some things you need to learn as well, but it will be useful for you if you learn any other computer languages, because it usually will be the very basic things which you need to explicitly write or do in stack really. But we still do a short course, short of syntax, couple of syntax questions for students. And stack itself, I think on the demo server have this stack syntax course which students can go through before they start doing the questions as well. So we find it useful in engineering. I think mathematicians are probably more advanced already with it in a way.
I was going to say it's no worse than LaTeX.
It's better than LaTeX. It's a lot better than LaTeX.
I mean, if you've got to learn it, it's no worse. It is actually easier, yeah. I only wrote my dissertation in LaTeX. I couldn't bear doing the math in Word and converting it to a picture. If I changed my version of Word, it just made me cry. Do we have any other questions for Matthew? Yeah, online. Do we have any questions for Matthew? Okay. Maybe. Let's have a look. No, so thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so before I release you all for coffee, there's a couple of things I want to share with you. The first one, if I can get this to share, is let's open this up. Boom. I will share a link for this. Is that I am. You probably don't want to. Yeah. Come on, my editing view. No, don't do that. This is what happens when you're logged into the editing bit at the same time. I'm really excited that we are hosting a AI UK Fringe event. In particular, it's about research integrity in an AI-enabled world. And it has implications, as you said, they come up with different answers. We have no idea what the epistemological framing is. And if you're doing this for qual things, and you're getting us to do your various systematic reviews and everything else, it causes some interesting issues. And there are some issues, I think, as a group of learned individuals, kind of across London and slightly broader, that I think we need to look at and we need to address. And I've been chatting to our colleagues in research and ethics here and more broadly. So we are hosting this event on the 25th of March. It will be a deep dive workshop. It is free to attend. There are talks in the morning. I already have 3 speakers lined up. I have a wonderful ECR talking about AI and authorship, a colleague from the IOE whose research is around systematic reviews and has been working with a data science team. I have Dustin Hussaini coming down from Strathclyde, who, for some of you who followed the CEDAR work, has done some interesting work around the social justice element of AI. And I'm waiting for confirmation from a few other academics that are going to come and do some talks in the morning. And then we're going to have a Well Cafe in the afternoon. And the idea is we're going to draft a policy white paper because we're not quite having the depth of discussion that we maybe need to have. So this has been shared to the AI Ed GIST group, the digital research community group. I've asked my colleagues in research and ethics to push this out. So if you do have colleagues, people you think would be interested, please share it with them. It is primarily targeted at people in and around London. And I'm talking about the CRIC and the Turing and everyone else as well with that. It kind of covers the whole gamut. But there is a free lunch. There will be coffee and pastries. But But yeah, it's going to be Monday, the 25th of March. The only other thing, before I let you go for kind of coffee here, and I will let you chat amongst yourselves online, is from a UCL, hang on, that one. From a UCL perspective, there is the Teaching and Code team in Teams. Please have conversations there. We also have the UCL Programming Hub Slack, and there is a channel for this there if you want to carry on conversations. We haven't quite worked out how to have the broader conversation. We're working on it. There will be a web page for this at some point. And the only other thing, and I will send this out to you all in an email, is that there is a happy sheet for today. So we have this space till 5 o'clock. Please drink the coffee, eat the biscuits. Online people, I'm going to stop talking and sharing. But I will leave the call open if you'd like to socialize amongst yourselves.